It wasn't my idea to wait, trust me. Is it a 10-way open? Only in Hollywood.
Things are worse.
Everybody, Padilla check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all for joining us today on what is truly a bittersweet day. I'm gonna have some stories to share, but I will shut it after because I think we should and need to hear first from man of the hour today. Heard it already, that's why you're here. We've heard that Congressman Tony Cárdenas has decided to not seek re-election. And so today, the San Fernando Valley and all of California begin to count down to the final day and the beginning of the retirement from public service of one of the greatest public servants our community has ever known. But it is sweet today because we get to celebrate my colleague, not just my friend, but my brother, Congressman Tony Cárdenas.
Some of you, it's the first time that you come to an event where I get to speak and speak from my heart. So for those of you who are wondering what this Kleenex is here, you're going to find out probably in a minute or so why it's here. In addition to that, I'm a slow learner. I've never carried a handkerchief with me, but today I brought one. But all joking aside, I want to take this moment to thank so many people who believed in me, supported me, and helped me be a representative of the Northeast San Fernando Valley, a community that I love very much, a community that gave so much to me and my 10 brothers and sisters, that welcomed 2 immigrants from Mexico to make a life in the imperfect but the greatest country on the planet. I want to first say thank you to my wife, Norma, who didn't sign up for this career of 28 years of public service. When we met, there were no designs of running for office, but she has been there for me and with me and for the community the whole way. As my rock, the love of my life, and a person who has demonstrated what it is to live a life of dignity and respect, and to be an amazing wife, a wonderful mother, and a great community member. So thank you. In such an elegant way. I want to also thank my children, Vanessa, Christian, Andres, and Alina, for being on this journey with us. Alina wasn't even born yet when I was sworn into the State Assembly and started this journey. Speaking of people who weren't born yet, thank you, Brian, for being the greatest son-in-law and bringing us 2 grandchildren. Mena and Joaquini. I want to thank my family for enduring the ups and downs and the interesting and unfortunately sometimes the ugliest times that we've experienced in our nation's history. but once again for being so steadfastly committed to the community and to this career that I've been so honored and blessed to have. The reason why Senator Padilla is here isn't because he's a United States Senator. It's because he was the first person that I hired when my first campaign started in 1995. He was a young man back then who grew up in Pacoima, the same zip code that I grew up in. He, like me, is the son of immigrants. We both ventured off to college to become engineers. But more importantly, we came back home to the community we love to figure out how can we make it better. So when I asked Alex Padilla, if I run for office, will you run my campaign? He said, he stood up and he shook my head and he said, yes. Later on, when I made that decision, I said, will you run my campaign? His exact words were, I said I would, didn't I? Because that's the way he was raised. When he gives his word, he keeps it. Something that is lost on some public leaders in our country. Simple things like, I give my word and I keep it. To be an elected official, to represent a community, is an honorable responsibility. Yet at the same time, in order to do it well, I believe that the teachings of Andres and Maria Cárdenas, that this school is named after, who only had a formal education of the first and second grade, taught all of us 11 children. Always be good. If you give your word, you keep it. Always help others. Never, ever believe that you cannot do the right thing. Those are the values that have allowed me to be awarded the honor to be voted into office time and time again for the last 28 years. I've had the honor and the privilege to negotiate and sometimes, yes, to argue with governors of California, mayors of Los Angeles, and yes, presidents of the United States. But never once did I do it in a way that would bring shame on my family or my community or any of you. Today is a day of celebration, of a day of gratitude for having been given that honor time and time again. And I say this as one of the simple truths that I hope and pray that every single one of us learns sometime in our life. We stand on the shoulders of people who came before us. We cannot and will not ever be the best that we could be if we don't at least understand what it is to be humble and gracious for all that we've been afforded. To be born in this great country, to parents who only had an opportunity of a first and second grade education in another country, and for them to be able to raise 11 children who went off and graduated from high school and went to college to get bachelor's and master's and doctorate degrees, to be leaders in their own right, in their own professions, only in America. And I'm very, very proud to say that at the young age of 60, some people have shared with me, and I very humbly share with you that they said, thank you for all that you've done for me, for my family, for our community, and for our country. And they have said, I stand on your shoulders. What an honor. What a privilege for somebody to speak from their heart and to say such a thing to another person. I enjoy that honor. I take it seriously. And I humbly have appreciated the honor of serving my community of the Northeast Valley in the state legislature, on the city council, and our great country as the Congressman of the 29th District here in the beautiful San Fernando Valley. My staff knows that when we receive a call for some humble person, whatever language that they call us in, that we are here to serve them, and we will do everything that we can to help them through their trials, through their challenges, because they deserve the best of every single one of us at every single moment. Again, I have an engineering degree, and those values that I just shared with you were not taught to me by some professor, by someone with a PhD. Those values were taught to me by two humble, beautiful people who came to this country for a better life, and that is what makes our country great. The humility and the love that we give to each other, and that we have the honor to do, that we choose to do every single day. And the last thing that I'll say before I turn it back over to our Senator, United States Senator Alex Padilla, is this. It's a great honor to be representing the community for 28 years. But the best thing that ever happened to me is I met what I thought at the time was the most beautiful, attractive woman I've ever seen in my life. But now I realize that that was just the surface. And what Norma Cárdenas has done for me is to make me the best person that I can be every single day. By critiquing what I happen to say, by fixing my tie, and yes, to tell me it's time to take out the trash. Thank you, Norma. I love you so much, and I stand on your shoulders as well. Thank you for coming here today, and I think the Senator has a few words to say, and I hope it doesn't turn into a roast, but if it does, I accept that, because this young man right here is the epitome of what it is to be humble, to be respectful, to know what it is to stand on others' shoulders, and to be the best that our community has to offer. Thank you, Senator. Thank you all.
I'm going to deviate from the prepared remarks for a second here to share truth about the taking out the trash comment. He's not making it up. Imagine this. He launches his campaign for assembly in 1995. Months and months and months of trying to raise a few dollars. Knocking on doors, making phone calls, putting up signs, trying to figure it out as we go, because he had never run for office before. I never managed the campaign. We organized the heck out of the Northeast Valley, and on election day there was hundreds of volunteers helping turn out the vote. By the time the results came in, Tony had won by 20 points. We're exhausted, but ecstatic. We left the campaign party that night, the election day party, back to Tony and Norma's home, and we're sitting there around the kitchen table, literally. So what's next? Got to start planning. It's late. Norma's tired. She comes into the kitchen, literally says, "Tony, I'm going to bed. Don't forget to take out the trash." That's how the career begins. Some things never change.
Yeah.
That's cool. Look, I've had the honor of, or Tony and I have had the honor of knowing each other actually longer than we knew when we first met in 1994. Tony talked about his parents. My parents, too, are immigrants from Mexico. I grew up in Pacoima, just a couple of blocks from the Cárdenas residence. We both went to Telfair Elementary. We both graduated from San Fernando High School. That's what I mentioned. He graduated in engineering. He's an electrical engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. We joked during that first campaign that if this political thing didn't work out, we'd open up an engineering company. Thank God it never came to that. But for the record, Tony's 10 years older, so he has a little more gray hair than I do. He says 10 years wiser. We've been doing this together. Now I'll tell you what it was for me, because we first met in 1994. I was in the Choral Fellowship program, trying to figure out what my place was and try to make the world a better place. Maybe electoral politics, maybe not. It was the year Proposition 187 was on the ballot. I was an intern in the Art Tours for Insurance Commissioner campaign. Yes, Patricia. You remember that campaign?
Oh, I remember a lot.
And I met then realtor Tony Cárdenas, who kind of was thinking maybe about running for office someday or not. And as we got to know each other, I got to know Tony's values. And when he suggested that he may run for office, that's the reason I committed so quickly. Like a lot of young people, to this very day, I was pretty cynical about politics and politicians. How could you not? When the governor of California at the time was on television saying our state was going downhill, and it was the fault of people like our parents and communities like ours, we had no choice but to be outraged and put our engineering degrees to work in trying to effectuate change in politics. I knew that there was 120 members of the legislature. I didn't know a single one. Didn't think I could relate. But I knew that if somebody like Tony, with his values and ethics, could be elected, then there would be hope for a better California. And so that's why I stood up and shook his hand. And I can attest to you, I'm glad it's good to hear this, that all these years later, that has never changed. Tony has never wavered from why he got into politics to begin with. That includes a lot of legislative accomplishments. That includes a lot of political leadership, and I'll share just a couple of things. But for me, it's included the blessing of not just having a front row seat to his service and to his country, but the blessing of being on the playing field together. Part of his purpose was to be the first person of color to represent the San Fernando Valley in Sacramento. And he did it admirably. Years later, he became the first Latino to represent the San Fernando Valley in the United States House of Representatives. It wasn't just about him. Him having the audacity to run, and the way in which he has served has opened the door for so many to follow, especially people who never would have imagined running for office. They did so because of Tony's example. They did so because of Tony's support and mentorship, and that includes me. In preparation for today, recalled a number of times, and over the next 13 months, you're going to be hearing a lot about his legislative legacy and record of accomplishments, from his time in the Assembly on juvenile justice, when it wasn't very popular to do so, chairing the Budget Committee in better budget times, but giving me calls in the middle of the night when I was on City Council saying, Alex, I'm here in the governor's office. We found an extra $100 million. Send me some project descriptions. They'll slip it in right now. We'll make the city follow through later. That was our partnership. My kind of remembers when he was on City Council, and I had appointed, when I was council president, appointed then Councilmember Cárdenas to oversee the committee which oversaw, among other departments and agencies, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, to thoughtfully, in a way only an engineer can, plan the transition of the country's largest municipal utility, transition to a cleaner energy future. Talking about solar and wind, etc., long before the rest of the state, long before the rest of the country. And we're fighting for those policies today at a national level. And certainly for the last decade in Congress, some of the many, many things he's championed, which we will celebrate. And I have a personal appreciation of his leadership and advocacy in the area of mental health. But above all, throughout his career, one of his biggest impacts the history books will write about is the example he has set for representation and the fight he has led for better representation for communities like ours in all institutions of power, including but not limited to elected office. The leadership and success he brought to both candidates, the political arm of the Congressional Democratic Caucus, growing their numbers tremendously to be the political force that it is today. Would that have happened without the determination and doggedness of my friend Tony Cárdenas? Look, I could go on and on. When I end on that, just a couple of personal observations, which Norma date back to those early days in the campaign. We joked today about, yes, we're roommates in Washington, D.C. Yes, that's the truth. We both pick up our socks, don't worry. But aside from admiring and being inspired by Tony's political vision and leadership, the example that he set as a husband and as a father is the most important. He has served with all his heart. He has served with all his fight. But he has served in a way that prioritizes first and foremost his unconditional love and commitment to Norma and his children, which has served for me as an example when years later, Tony and Norma played Cupid, don't blame it on Norma, and introduced me to my beautiful wife, Angela. Our struggles and sacrifices and public service demands of public servants. I know that I have a tremendous example to follow, not just how I can be a good elected official, but first and foremost, be a good husband and father, and live up to the values that are instilled in us by our parents. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a bittersweet day. Kept telling Tony, 30 is a nice round number. This morning, and he says, no, it's time. And I love him too much and respect him too much to argue over it, to fight over it. But this is not the end. Today's not the last day. Today's the count. If I know Tony the way I think I know Tony for the next 30 years, he's not going to be counting the days. Rest assured, he's going to be making every day count. Thank you so much. We all understand what an eclectic country we live in. I don't speak 3-4 languages, but I've been blessed to speak to the language of my parents. The first language I've ever learned. I'd like to say a few words in Spanish. Hoy mismo estoy anunciando todo lo que agradezco a la comunidad por darme este honor de ser su representante aquí en el noreste del Valle de San Fernando por 28 años. Y estamos aquí enfrente de una escuela que se llama Andrés and María Cárdenas Elementary School. Los nombres de dos inmigrantes, mis padres, que lograron mucho aquí en este país, pero más importante, llegaron aquí para que sus hijos podrían lograr mucho más que ellos. Y para mí, esa es la historia
de este país, lo bueno de este país. Que este país está hecho en los hombros de inmigrantes. Y me da mucho gusto y orgullo de decir que yo soy nacido aquí en este país tan poderoso, tan bonito. Pero con igualdad de orgullo digo que yo soy hijo de inmigrantes. Y aquí en este país, un hijo de inmigrantes de México, que solamente llegaron al primero y el segundo grado en su país de México, su hijo puede ser un congresista representándonos en Washington, D.C. Hoy es un día de celebración y también un día para agradecer a todos que me han dado este honor y oportunidad. Y estamos aquí con mi familia, mi esposa Norma, mis hijos, Alex Padilla, nacido en Pacoima, hijo de inmigrantes, hijo de padres de México, y también a su esposa Angela, que es parte de nuestra comunidad y parte de mi familia. Voy a seguir adelante por los siguientes 11, 13 meses siendo representante y ojalá que puedo seguir adelante avanzando temas importantes para todos, incluso los inmigrantes, que merecen lo mismo que cualquier persona aquí en este país. Thank you. Any questions?
Could you say a part in English about